Welcome everyone to the All Surface Show. I am David EJ Berger. I'm based in Southern California. I'm tossing it to my main man in Melbourne, Mr. Ace Previews himself. Steve, welcome in. It has been a minute, and I think the theme of this show should just be we're doing an episode, so let's just chat some tennis, see where it goes.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for the intro. What are we in now? Start of the second week of August, and I've already had to buy my Australian Open tickets for next year. So the tour just keeps moving at a rapid rate. But no, looking forward to chatting.
When we kind of soft launched the show a year ago, that was like the fall, and the Australian Open is going to come up pretty quickly. And you know who might headline that Australian Open draw on the women's side, Steve? Alex Eala, the talk of the tennis tour at the moment. And I mean, maybe rightfully so, just for this little window we are in. I mean, we're post Wimbledon. You know, you wonder if your ladies Wimbledon champion Shkova feels the same, who just won a Grand Slam. But I mean, she is the talk of the town, Alex Eala, and I don't think there's anyone really worth talking about at the top of this show, quite frankly, as well. I guess it goes both ways, though, Steve. Like, the pushback is brewing. People are, I'm not going to say annoyed, but, you know, with success comes detractors. So I think she's gaining obviously more fans, but the detractors, just in terms of just being haters, are also growing as well, Steve.
Yeah, it's in a way it kind of feels a bit like Fonseca, 12 months later kind of thing, except Eala seems to probably have a few more detractors, which is probably just to the way of the world at the moment. But I think if you are a tennis player, I think the women's tour at the moment is so much better placed than the men's, just in terms of global branding, presentation, competitiveness, I guess, at the top in terms of variety at the top, which we didn't have. You go back 5 years, when Ash Barty retired, it was Iga and then maybe Sabalenka and then not a stack else underneath that. Whereas now you've got, you go, fast forward to the US Open in a couple of weeks, you could rattle off 15, 20 names who could win it, and you could go, oh yeah, like I can see that. I think Jessica Pegula probably summed it up best after the DC final the other day, that she lost to Eala. She's like, her podcast, which is the Players Box, they got like 4,000 or 5,000 more subscribers off the back of that match alone, just in terms of the general interest and everything that's coming from not just Eala, but you look at past tournaments. I was at the Australian Open this year. One of the most watched videos of the entire tournament was Eala's pre-tournament press conference. Like, there's just a lot of interest, and I think they really need to make the most of it as much as they can. And it's probably fortunate, I think, for the North American audience here, that her tennis recently is backing it up, and that's probably going to really help over the course of the next couple of weeks. But she's become a player, I think, that you don't want. Players probably want to face in a way because it's giving them a bigger profile, but they also don't want to face just because, for her limitations in her game, she is a player who is going to dig in and, make you beat her for the most part.
I was like, is she playing right now? Yes, she is. She's up a set, And now she has 2 break points in the second set against your girl, Katie McNally. You always leaving the light on for her to do well. Yeah, I just feel like with Eala, like she is living up to the moment a little bit. I mean, not only just with her play on court, winning that DC title. I mean, I did think, if I'm being honest, the photos around town, which is great for the tournament. I mean, this is not a Grand Slam, Steve. I mean,
it's not a Grand Slam.
Congratulations for winning DC, but that was definitely some pomp and circumstance. Maybe they do that every time.
But if you're sitting there as a tournament director or tournament team from a social media perspective as well, and you're seeing the hits that are coming through on anything that involves her in any way, shape, or form, of course you're going to lean into it, though. Whether it's right or not,
there's a reason we're talking about it right now, but I also feel like we're offering a different perspective, though, too.
Yeah, and I think so for me, what has probably impressed me the most with her is it felt like that North American, was it the Indian Wells Miami last year, where she went on a bit of a run? That felt like that was almost a little bit ahead of time. Like she was kind of became overexposed, maybe a little bit too early for her game to be able to kind of stack up and match. She beat Madison Keys, I think it was, who had come off an Australian Open title. But for her age, 20 into 21, the way that she handled that period, she hasn't really put a foot wrong, you could say, like in terms of the way that she's, I'm just thinking back, as an Australian, thinking about tennis players who probably get exposed a little bit too early for everything else to, marry up. I think, Nick Kyrgios, Bernard Tomic, those kind of likes who just did not handle the attention particularly well when it came, in a wave. But I think she's done a really good job of being, fairly grounded and level-headed across the course of the last 18 months. So it's going to be interesting to see where she gets to in terms of her ceiling with her game. But it's going to be interesting.
Oh, I agree. But also, she is 5'9" and spent like the last half decade at the Nadal Academy. So, I mean, if she had any semblance of talent, probably would bear some fruit with the training she's had. And good for her. I'm not that I don't say that to detract from her in any way whatsoever. In fact, she should be applauded for the time and effort actually like leading to success versus some other players out there. Let's talk about Ben Shelton now, Steve. He, I think at this point, is your presumptive men's favorite for Canada, repeating as a champion. I'm going to ask you a question. If he wins this title, is this anything? That's a long pause.
I'm going to say, well, yes and no. If I had to pick one, I'd say no, because he's not breaking new ground.
I agree.
That being said, though, winning a 1,000 for pretty much anyone else in this draw would be amazing. Even you probably say for Tommy Paul, even who's struggling at the moment, but looking at the players left, I think Shelton's probably the only one that this title doesn't kind of elevate him to another level. It's okay, so you've matched what you did last year. Kind of what's next? For me with Shelton, it's a bit of a funny one because he feels like he overperformed at Grand Slams relative to the rest of his level, and then now that kind of slam
early on, right?
Off. Yeah. And now with that slam performance kind of dropping off a bit, you look at it and you go, well, he's really got to be winning those matches like he lost at Wimbledon. Like it's those matches that are a bit fine marginy. He's got the serve. He's got the ability to play with a high ceiling. He's just got to be better, I think, in those situations. But yeah, I think it'd be great for him, obviously, to win it. From a maintaining his ranking, building up form. But he's going to need a little bit of luck, I think, with the draw come the US Open. I think that's going to be the case with anyone who wants to be as far away from Jannik Sinner as possible. But yeah, it's been a bit of a funny year for him. He hasn't gone as far backwards as maybe some others, but he certainly hasn't kind of progressed like you'd anticipate or hope.
Taking on João Fonseca next. You know what? I will not necessarily change my answer, but I would be encouraged with the win over the Brazilian en route to this title. So there is actually opportunity for him to make this a thing. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I think you can elevate whoever it is out of that, whoever comes out of that clash. And look, someone who maybe hasn't had the same, how do I put this? Someone who maybe doesn't get the same credit, but has really, I think, taken, again, he hasn't exploded, but I feel like he's edging in the right direction, is Brandon Nakashima. If we're talking about American tennis players at the moment, very rarely, if any time, gets the attention of all of the other players. But he's just starting to, you look at Washington, beat Menchik, beat De Minaur, lost to Fritz in 3 sets. It's like his match the other night. It's his ability to kind of get out of these tricky spots that he's, lost, I think, over the last couple of years, throwing that uncharacteristic loss. I think he's starting to look a little bit more consistent. So I'm actually curious to see where he can get to. He's in a position now where he's going to be seeded at the US Open, which is going to help him a little bit. But I'm keeping a pretty close eye on Nakashima.
What's the key ingredient there for his rise, Steve?
I think again, it's just that I don't necessarily think his ceiling has risen.
It's a box change. He has a new coach. William Ferrer is in the box since late June,
and it's worked. I think there is obviously that sugar hit that can come sometimes with the coaching change.
I
think
agree.
What it has done is, as I said, his ceiling, I think, is still his ceiling, but I think his floor has come up a bit. I don't think we're getting that real off performance, that we've kind of come to know, but
I a lot of confidence too.
Yeah. And that's the thing that that coach changes can do for you as a player. It's now up to him to be able to kind of continue that on. Still got an opportunity here, so still live in Montreal, but it's going to be interesting to see how he goes over the next month or so.
I kind of want to see what Jakub Menchik will do this North American calendar versus last year, because he was abysmal last year. He could not get a first serve in. You mentioned the Nakashima loss. I actually, not to bring betting into it, but because of last year's results, I did bet Nakashima that day. I feel like he is someone. Look, I lamented that they put Hodar Feast in that early window, like on Tuesday on DC, for Menchik versus Little Svida. But the reason they did it is Jakub Menchik is now a Roland Garros semifinalist. So, and he's a Miami champion, of course. But I'm just saying he's like, his status is a bit raised. And I think we all have high hopes for him. We're on hard courts for a long time, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying Menchik necessarily has something to prove, but I'm not saying that. I do think that this fall calendar, not going to be career defining, but I think that there's a lot on the table for Jakub Menchik to make hay with, and let's see how he does as the weeks progress.
Yeah, I think when you look at it, a title, a title this week puts him or Hadar or Lehechka into the top 10. I think when you look at the way the men's draw is shaping out at the moment, like the best part is when did Carlos last play? It was,
I want to say Barcelona.
yeah. So he's still ranked 2 in the world and hasn't played the better part of half a season. So we've got obviously Sinners at the top, then we've got Alcaraz, and then Zverev is nearly double the ranking points of 4th, which is Felix Auger-Aliassime, who feels gettable, I think, on his day at the moment. There's been a coaching
Random
change
withdrawal.
as well.
I feel also from this event.
Concerning withdrawal, yeah. Then you've got Novak, who is barely playing. Then you've got Medvedev, who you never know what's going to turn up. You've got De Minaur, who we could spend a whole hour on the De Minaur-Norrie match.
We don't need to. He maxed out his
No.
capabilities, and it's over.
Yeah. Then you got Fritz, who's been playing, plus minus a knee injury for the better part of the year. Then you got, Flavio Cobolli, who either wins the tournament or loses in the first round. And then you've got Shelton. And then you've got the people sitting outside the top 10, who is Bublik, who looks to be back to pre-2025 Bublik for large parts of the season. Credit to him for taking these couple of weeks off for his kid's birthday. Lehechka, who's got a new coach. Musetti, who can't get past Hadar. Casper Ruud, who just seems to be kind of floating in this stage of his career. And then you got Hadar, Menchik, Rublev, and Double V. That's your top 18. I feel like of those, Menchik is one of those ones who's able to kind of make that push up. He's showing a little bit more consistency, I think, in his level. But it's a really interesting kind of pocket of time in terms of who, if you were to fast forward, say, to the end of 2027, who's your top 10? Maybe we need to go away and have a think about it for the next show.
Well, the obvious ones would be Sinner, Alcaraz, Hodar, Zverev, Fils, Menchik,
Shelton.
I mean, it's what he does on a hard court will make or break that. I mean, I'll leave the light on for grass, but there's just a lot of hard courts. So yeah, it doesn't even matter. Like he could get there just being a pure hard quarter. Felix did, although he did have the quarterfinal run at Roland Garros this year. So but that actually is what, by the way, I mean, I know they all know this, but like when you have results, it makes your path easier. So try to do that. And I feel like Felix, like a Canadian hard quarter making the Roland Garros, and Demon did the same thing, but like I feel like Demon's game maybe translates a little bit more to clay than Felix. Just because like he already plays a lot of balls. I mean, I don't know what these guys are doing. Just try to win some matches. I know that they say they are, but are you really? It's a lot of bad losses on the men's side quite often, Steve.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think, there used to be a lot of commentary around Casper Ruud and his, for lack of a better term, vulturing of 250s when he was in that kind of, top 4, top 8 in the world. But why wouldn't you, if it sets up a path for you to stay away from?
It's 100% how he made 3 slam finals.
Yeah, like as if you wouldn't try and go down that path if it was, the easier avenue to avoiding having to play Novak Djokovic before a quarterfinal or a semi, or Rafa Nadal in a quarter or a semi. It's I think it's in an interesting place, but it has that bit of a feel of like, when the next gen first came on, I was like, oh, the next gen's going to take over, and then none of them really took over. It was just Novak for another 10 years.
Well, Hodar is encouraging.
Okay. Yes. So I think that's the interesting thing of like, fast forward to the end of next year. Who is it out of Hadar, Fonseca, does Lerner hang around.
Blocks, I think, will be a guy. I'll flag plant Blocks. And I'll flag plant Luciano Draderi. But the thing of it is, Collion, I don't know if I can flag plant him at this moment. No, the return game is too suspect, and honestly, Blocks the service game is suspect as well. But I think I've seen enough from Blocks at this point. I do think he will be a name brand player on this tour.
But yeah, I think it's an interesting question of if you had to list your top 10, assuming no major injuries. And look, the person that we haven't really spoken about, who's not really in the ranking. Well, I mean, Jack Draper, you could say to an extent, but the man who's now selling his own honey, Holger Rune. A comeback that just hasn't really eventuated yet. It's going to happen at some point. But
I am encouraged from what I've seen.
Well, pardon?
I'm encouraged from what I've seen.
Like,
I know he's playing against air, but like, think about. I mean, we're in the middle of NFL training camp season here in the United States. Like, he looks good against air. That's good, at least.
Yeah. And I think so. I actually thought at the time when his name started popping up again that was way too early for the injury that he suffered. So I am glad that he is going about it this way. But it's I'm interested. I'm interested to see where he can get back to and how quickly he can get back to it. Because I think if he does keep going about it the right way, you think about his level and what he could do. It was more so his tank and his ability to kind of be there late in those big matches that became a bit of a question mark. If he's able to build up his, endurance potentially a little bit, it's going to be interesting.
We've spent most of this time talking in the men's tour. We did start with Eala. Any percolating women's thoughts top of mind, Steve?
I think it's the main thing is, as I said, of how open it is overall. And that's largely to do with, Sabalenka and Rybakina just not, I guess, I think at the start of the year or, towards the start, it looked like they were just going to be kind of a two-woman show for large parts. But now you've got
that way, right?
Yeah. But now you've got there's not as much of a divide in terms of the ranking points at the top. Rybakina is within 1,000 points of Sabalenka for world number one. And Rybakina is not even probably playing at her best level as well. So it's a really interesting spot, I think. Jess Pegula, sitting third, Coco Gauff fourth, Andreeva fifth, and then you've got the two Wimbledon, the champ and finalists, 6 and 7. So again, I think it's a really interesting spot. As I said, I could rattle off the names of the top 20, and I reckon definitely the top 15, you could make a case for most of them at the US Open. It's just very, very open, and it's good, I think, for variety week to week. You're not going to find, we're not getting Sabalenka, Rybakina in every final of every big tournament, because there's that element of vulnerability. But also at the same time, you've got Andreeva, who is 5 in the world, who lost to Leylah Fernandez with, barely giving a yelp today in terms of her level. So, there's a lot of capability, I think, in the women's game. There's less people have learned how to deal with power, I think, coming from the other end of the court a little better.
If Coco Gauff chooses any shot but the drop shot at the end of that Wimbledon match, is she your Wimbledon champion?
I'd say so, yeah. I think that's a pretty fair comment. I think she changed her mind about 7 times on that shot across the course of it coming back across the net. So, yeah. And look, I think that's the thing with Coco, or even, the top 4, there just hasn't, they're not the ones that have won the slams lately. It's that kind of next batch down. Andreeva, Noskova, it's making it a little bit more interesting, which I like, and I think brings to your point and kind of carries over what we're talking about for the men's, that the importance of playing a lot of tennis and getting high up in the draw to be able to be seeded away from those top names is pretty important week to week, when there's less than there's just over 500 points between 4th and 7th at the moment in terms of the ranking. So there's a bit of a fight on over the next couple of weeks as to who's going to be world number 4 and get that number 4 seed at the US Open.
I mean, there's a lot of points coming up for both tours.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the news about needs to be verified, but any health reports about the Alex Center, not great. Obviously, Alcaraz withdrew from Cincinnati. I mean, he's putting on things at the end of his calendar. Does that mean we're not going to see him until then? So a lot of things could shift here, Steve.
Well, the best ability is availability. So,
but the thing of it is, though, Steve, like, a lot of things can shift in terms of rankings, points, prize money, and that is all awesome. Isn't the point to play slams? Like, who's going to win this? Like, the women's side seems wide open.
Yep.
But if Yannick Sinner plays the US Open, he's winning the US Open. Or, I mean, if Alcaraz plays, maybe he wins. I do think, like, market-wise, maybe the Alcaraz decent bet, but there's just no one beating Sinner unless he goes full, pumpkin because of the heat, a la Roland Garros, which he could. I mean, this is talking about North American summer. We just, that was the main talking point for the World Cup, how all these players, and not that he hasn't played it and won it before, but I'm just saying, like, it is a thing. Like, the heat is a thing in North America at the US Open.
And he struggled in the US Open as recently as the match against Felix. I think he was struggling with the heat, still got over the line. Obviously, his advantage is he is that much better than the majority of the rest of the draw. I just don't. I think I'd be surprised if Carlos comes back at the US Open. It just feels like it just doesn't feel like a Carlos thing to do. Like, go straight from 0 into 7 best of 5 matches. With
what if he
injury
plays Winston-Salem though, Steve?
Is he going to play Winston-Salem? What if he plays the mixed doubles? It's a bit of a funny spot. But look, okay, one player I am keeping my eye on the women's side of the US Open is Amanda Anisimova. I think she is, I don't want to say flying under the radar, because I don't think she is, but I think her level, there's room for improvement in her level. I think she's reverted back to an old coach. There seems to be a bit of a trend across a lot of the stuff we've been talking about here in terms of coaching changes. But I think, she's sitting around kind of 10 in the world at the moment. If she can put together a good week or two here and get a top 8 seed, I think she's one to keep an eye on across the US Open.
Impressive way she managed her last match here in Canada.
Absolutely. On the ropes, but took won the second set with a bagel. And then the third set, I think, was 3-4, 15-40 down and barely lost a point the rest of the way. Impressive. And they're the kind of things that you need, to build your confidence up over the course of a long tennis season. It hasn't been her best year, but I think she's certainly capable. And a good showing here. And Cincinnati would certainly put her in a good position, I think, to match it. And she's got the game, I think, to match it with everyone ranked above her in the draw.
All right, I think that is a good spot to end it for today. I feel like we got a solid rep in. A show shall be shared. Follow Steve at ace_previews. Do like and subscribe on YouTube, The All Surface Show. Hopefully we will be doing more of this. It has been a minute, but I think the plan is to make it more routine. Until next time, see you on the court.